We welcome you to the Eagles pregame show brought to you by SeatGeek. Use code Philly Sports Sports, save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. I am Ben Goldstein and by Sam Heine. The Eagles make their first trip to North Jersey of the season to face the Giants. This is their first division game
Yep, first division game of the year.
Kind of crazy. Week 7, and we're just playing our division rivals. But it's the Giants, and Saquon Barkley returns to the Meadowlands for the first time as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles. Sam, it's hard to feel good about this team right now, but how are we feeling today?
Yeah, it's exciting. Like you said, the first division game of the season, so that always brings a little bit extra juice. You know, my dad's a Giants fan, so that brings a little bit extra juice to our family group chat today during this game. But yeah, I'm excited for this game. Hopefully the Eagles can stack some wins coming up here with a little bit of an easy schedule. And yeah, I'm ready for them to get this kicked off.
Yeah, stacking up wins. They got a win last week against the Cleveland Browns. It wasn't the prettiest. It wasn't the ugliest. But what transpired after the game was pretty ugly, and it involves the head coach. Let's just get right into it. You read the title. Nick Sirianni made himself the story last week in their 2017 win over the Cleveland Browns. 2016 win over the Browns. Ugly. So yeah, Sirianni, some players told him to be himself, and he listened maybe a little too much. He got in a fight with Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome in the middle of the game. He was chirping fans on the sideline after barely beating the 1-5 Browns, and he brought his children into the post-game presser to maybe, try and simmer some things down and make things light, but it kind of just intensified things some more. I mean, you wrote a story a few weeks ago that the blame should not go on Nick Sirianni. I think you jinxed the entire Philadelphia Eagles organization.
Yeah, I may as well have. Nick definitely made himself the story last week after the win. I still stand by what I said. I don't think that Nick Sirianni is the biggest problem with this team, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit later on with one of our topics that we have. So I still stand by that. But it's hard to get away from the whole Nick Sirianni thing. During the offseason, the big kind of talking point was, what does he do? Does he do anything? And I think we're finding out exactly what he does do and what he doesn't do. Obviously, we've seen him go against some fans in the past, Chiefs fans, Colts fans, some other fans, but those were all opposing teams fans. So while a lot of people didn't like it, it wasn't that big of an issue. But then to go back at your own fans, I understand that there was some fire Nick chants last week, and there was some other things, you can never imagine what is said by some fans when they are liquored up and angry. Some people say disgusting things, but at the end of the day, Nick is the head coach of a NFL team, and there's only 32 of these jobs in the entire world, and you need to handle yourself better than he did last week. It doesn't matter if he was going back at them in a funny way, a jokey way from the video, and that's what a lot of people are going to take it from, because you can't hear what he's saying. From that video, it looks like he's yelling at them, and just the optics are really, really bad. And I know the players want him to be more of himself, and that's fine. I think the players really like Nick Sirianni, and if they like Nick Sirianni, then that's all that really matters. What we think of him doesn't matter if the players like him. But in terms of the post-game press conference, going into that with bringing the kids up there, I do think it was a deflection mechanism, trying to get the kind of the heat off a little bit. Maybe some people will be less inclined to ask such harsh questions if he, has those kids up there. It doesn't bother me as much as it does some other people. I know a lot of radio people and some fans it really bothered, but maybe if I was in the position of having to go in and ask Nick Sirianni tough questions, maybe it would bother me a little bit more. And I definitely understand their position if it did bother them, because if they have a job to do, and it's not always easy to ask their father if some really tough questions on job security and this and that while his little kids are sitting right in front of him. So from that standpoint, I do get it. Normally the kids don't go out there until it's Super Bowl, NFC Championship win. I think the biggest thing to take away from this is that he was just tone deaf last week. He didn't understand how the fans were feeling. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of people are angry, is that you barely beat a team that will probably be fighting for the number one pick in the draft coming up next April. You barely beat them. You didn't play well again. And whether or not it's his fault, the quarterback's fault, the offensive coordinator's fault, you failed to score in the first quarter again. And I think more people are focusing on the kids in the press conference than the actual answers in the press conference. I think one of the things that annoyed me the most was that he was so put off as to the questions that were raised to him, where one reporter, I don't remember who asked it, but one reporter asked about the struggles in the first quarter, about them not scoring, them being the only team in the NFL so far this season that has not scored in the first quarter. And he said, "Oh, we'll figure it out. Offense is hard in this league, but we'll get it done. We'll get it done." Kind of laughing at the question and just not really taking it seriously. And I think that that's the biggest thing for me, at least, that was kind of frustrating with him last week, is that there are major problems with this team, and whether or not you think he has a major imprint on the offense, on how this team performs, the head coach puts his name on all of that. And for them to come out and struggle against a team that's fighting for the will be fighting for the number one pick, to come out unprepared every single week and not score in the first quarter, his name is all on that. So I just think his tone deafness last week was definitely an issue, and hopefully he can kind of rein it in a little bit going forward, just, as a forward-facing figure of the team.
And going back on the question that was asked about the struggles in the first half, he kind of blamed it on the media and said it's a problem because you guys are making it a problem and blowing it up, which is just so false. It is a problem.
When you're the only team in the NFL who has not scored a single point in the first quarter this season, and it's week 7, that's not a media narrative. That's a major problem. Like, you can't blame, I know people want to deflect things onto the media and all that kind of things. And I do think that, obviously media can bring up some topics sometimes that a lot of people don't agree with, but that is just a fact. They have not scored a first quarter point so far this season. And when you're the head coach, like I said, your name is stamped right on that, whether or not you are in charge of the offenses or not, your name is stamped right on that in terms of getting your team ready and prepared to play. So it's a completely valid question. And when you're the only team in the league that hasn't done it, it's going to be brought up every single week until you get it fixed.
8 straight weeks, or I guess 7 straight weeks of no score in the first quarter. We'll dive into that a little bit more. But yeah, this whole Sirianni thing, it's like, I think bringing the kids into the press conference, and he's done it before, prior to the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. This isn't bring your child to work day. This is the National Football League. And
yeah,
I mean, I think celebrations is when you can have your kids in there. You win the NFC. When they did that a few years ago, he had his kids in there. It was perfectly fine. If they win the Super Bowl, you bring them in there. But you don't see Andy Reid doing things like this. You never saw Bill Belichick doing things like this. Dick Vermeil never did things like the great coaches don't fire back at the fans and blame things on the media and rub off questions. That's my biggest thing, is just the unseriousness and the unprofessionalism of Sirianni. And when asked about the fans, he said he was just fired up. So you're fired up, so you're chirping back at your own fan. I don't get it. You don't see Nick Nurse doing that. You don't see Rob Thompson doing that. John Tortorella doesn't. No other coach, I don't think, in sports does what Sirianni did last week. And I think it's a big deal.
No, he's, like you said, he's the only one really in sports that does it. And the kids thing, like I said, I understand why a lot of people are frustrated of it, and I agree with them. I'm not going to sit up here and say that, oh, this is so you can't do it anytime. I think, like you said, you said it perfectly. Championships or winning something. One of the biggest and most memorable pictures of the Super Bowl win is Nick Foles with his daughter, up at the stage with the Super Bowl trophy. That is an amazing moment that he will have with his daughter forever. But that was after a Super Bowl win. Joel Embiid with his son after winning the MVP, when he was crying with his son, that was an amazing moment. But all these amazing moments, even going back to Steph Curry with his daughter and Chris Paul with his son, and all these moments like that, they're all after they accomplish something big, not after they barely beat the Cleveland Browns. So I think there is a time and a place for those things. And there's no other coach in the league that's bringing their kids to regular press conferences after normal games. There's no other coach, like you said, that does these things. So it's definitely an issue. And the players want Nick to be Nick, but at the same time, there's certain jobs just in life in general that they need to have a certain professionalism about them. And head coach of an NFL team certainly is that and is one. He's the face of a multi-billion-dollar business at the end of the day, whether or not people want to think about it like that or not. So when they start all the shows on Monday morning, not talking about anything else except how Nick Sirianni is, as people have said on TV, a clown, is obviously not a great look for the Eagles organization as a whole. So, yeah, he's definitely got to rein it in just from the optics standpoint, PR standpoint, and it's just it's something that could definitely get him fired at the end of the season, even if they do make the playoffs.
If you are Jeffrey Lurie and you're sitting in your suite seeing the Eagles barely beating the Cleveland Browns, and you look up at the TV and you see your head coach chirping back at the fans, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, well, I don't know what Lurie's thinking, but at least I would be thinking I should have just fired him last year, because I feel like another head coach could come in and do what he does. He's a CEO head coach. A lot was made in the offseason about he doesn't do this with the offense, he doesn't do that. Well, obviously Nick is throwing things out there where he's saying that he's calling defensive plays, which Vic Fangio said he's not. He's calling offensive plays, which we don't know if that's true or not. Like, this could have been done by somebody else. And if he's going to continue to do this, like I said, it's a way for him to get fired, even if they do make the playoffs, because they could find somebody else to come in and be a CEO head coach. It's not as hard as being a coach that comes up with the offense. It's not as hard as being a coach that runs the defense. They have coordinators in place, whether or not we think they're good, but they have coordinators in place. So I think, it's definitely not helping his job security, I would think.
Certainly isn't. Let's move on.
The Eagles organization, there was real quick before we move on. Yep. The Eagles organization, there was leaks, that they were not happy with his antics after the game, and you don't want these guys, Howie and Jeff, to have to babysit their head coach, but I'm sure they had talks with him. That's for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like they did, because Sirianni came out over the weekend, apologized for whatever, kind of probably was told to apologize. Wouldn't if he wasn't asked to. All right, let's move on to, there is a football game today. Nick Sirianni will be a part of it, so that should be interesting. But the Eagles are playing the Giants, and we had the same headline last week against the Browns, and we're using it. The Giants stink. They're 2-4. Daniel Jones is their quarterback. Their defense is okay. Their receiving core is great. We'll get to that in a little bit. But if the Eagles can barely beat the Browns at home, what in the heck are they going to do against the Giants? Ooh, the big bad, big blue.
Yeah, the Giants are frisky. They have had a few games not go their way due to late drops by their rookie star receiver, Malik Neighbors. If he catches that ball against Washington, they probably win the game. If they have a kicker against Washington, they probably win the game. Their place kicker got hurt during the game, so they had to go for it on just about every fourth down instead of kicking field goals. So they're a frisky team. They're not. I don't think they're as bad as everyone thinks they are. They got a really, really, really good defense. Their defensive line leads the NFL in sacks currently, and they're getting a lot of really talented players coming back off of injury this week in Dexter Lawrence and Malik Neighbors. So I think the Giants are better than people give them credit for. Last year, the Giants beat us 27-10 in the last game of the season. Obviously, they have a new defensive coordinator now instead of what was their coordinator? I'm blanking on the guy's
Matt
name.
Patricia?
No, the Giants defensive coordinator last year, Wink Martindale, who gives us a lot of trouble with his blitzing schemes. I think that the Giants are going to try to reach back into the Martindale bag a little bit today to try to use some of his schemes against Jalen, because Jalen really struggled with it last year. I think the Giants are better than people give them credit for. I'm not saying that they're, a great team or anything and the Eagles shouldn't beat them. But I just think the record, it's kind of like the Eagles, people can say that, well, if Saquon didn't drop that pass against Atlanta, then the Eagles are 4-1. And, we're looking at this thing a whole lot differently. I think you can say the same thing as the Giants. If Neighbors dropped two potentially game-winning passes, they could easily be, let's just say 1-1 if those go their way. They could be right at 3-3. And their defense is really good. Their defense is really good, especially that defensive line. The back seven's not as great, but they have a really good defensive line. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be another close game. The Eagles always play close games. That's just about what they're about now. So I expect kind of the same kind of game today.
You mentioned a little bit about Malik Neighbors. Eagles secondary will have a little bit of a good receiving core to go against the Giants today, specifically Neighbors, 6th overall pick. He's returning from a concussion injury, 35 receptions, 686 yards, 3 TDs, averages 11 yards a play. Darius Slay is active. He was questionable throughout the week, but he will play. Malik Neighbors has been a savior for the Giants, if you want to say. He's been awesome. They also have Darius Slayton, who is a solid WR2. So, yeah, I mean, what do you look at against this Eagles secondary and this Giants receiving core?
Yeah, I mean, Neighbors definitely scares you. He's an absolute stud. It looks like the Giants hit on that pick for sure. Coming out of LSU, he was obviously touted as one of the best wide receivers in this year's draft, right up there with Rome Odunze. Rome has had a kind of slow start to his NFL career, but he also is behind Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. So that's, it's going to be tough for him to kind of break out, where Neighbors is the number one guy from day one. And he is definitely showing that he has the potential to be a number one receiver in this league. I did mention that he had a couple drops late in games, so it's definitely something to watch out for. I think he'll get that cleaned up as his career goes on, but at least for right now, he's had a couple big drops. But I mean, he's their offense. Daniel Jones targets him a ton. Obviously, he has, like you said, 386 yards so far this year, and he's missed a few games with a concussion, so he's been amazing. Darius Slay is going to be active today, like you also mentioned, but I mean, with a knee injury, we already know he's kind of declined a little bit this season. Definitely makes me nervous. He was torched a little bit by the Buccaneers wide receivers, and obviously, I hope that we get Q on him a little bit. I would love to see what Q can do matched up against him. First wide receiver taken against the first cornerback taken in this year's draft would be a really fun matchup to see. We haven't really seen Slay travel so far this year that much. So, Q's going to get his chances against him. And Q's been fantastic this year. So I think against Slayton, he'll do a good job. Q's obviously very fast. And so it's Slayton. But yeah, Neighbors is going to get a lot of targets. We know that. And coming off, they're going to target him early and often. They're going to test Darius Slay's knee as much as they can. And, if there's a worry on the Giants offense, it's definitely him.
Sure is. Let's jump back up. I want to talk about some more Eagles injuries that happened throughout this week, specifically Jordan Mailata, who came out earlier this week and was made official just a few days ago that he is hitting the injured list with a hamstring injury. He's eligible to return in week 11. So big loss for the Eagles offensive line. Fred Johnson will fill in at left tackle for the Eagles, and this Giants defensive line is pretty good, and they'll have Fred Johnson to go up against. That's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, this game's really going to test Jalen's pocket presence. It's a big issue so far this season with him that, he's been struggling with fumbles with that as well. Obviously, Fred Johnson's going to, you can't say that if Jalen gets sacked a lot, we can obviously look at Fred Johnson for the reason why, but Jalen needs to be more aware of that left side. The Giants, like you said, they have a really good defensive line. They lead the league in sacks so far this season. Their first-round pick from last year, even though he hasn't had such a great year, Kayvon Thibodeau is on IR, so that'll help a little bit. But they traded for Brian Burns last season. In the offseason, he's an extremely talented pass rusher, and they're going to get him lined up there against Fred Johnson all game long, testing him early and often. When Johnson came into the game for Lane during the Saints game, he did a good job, but that was also on the right side. Now he'll be on the left side, and we've heard Andre Dillard talk about in the past that even though it's the same position, just other side, that it's like playing it backwards. So it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for him. He was really, really bad against the Buccaneers when he filled in for Lane So I'm definitely really nervous about him. He's going to be the guy that they target. And then Cam Jurgens is going to be tested as well this week. They get Dexter Lawrence back. Sexy Dexy, as the Giants fans like to call him, and as Dexter Lawrence likes to call himself. We know he's a talker for sure. He kind of was running his mouth a few years ago before the Eagles smacked him around in the playoffs. But he is a fantastic player. He might be the best defensive tackle in the NFL right now. He has 7 sacks so far this season, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but he's like right up there at the top of the leaders in sacks. So he's a great player. They get him off of IR this week or off of injury this week. So yeah, the Eagles' offensive line with a backup there at left tackle is going to have a lot to fill in for.
Dexter Lawrence has 7 sacks this season. It's tied for second in the league. He has 12 solo sacks as well. Calling yourself Sexy Dexy might be like top 10 most loser. If you're calling yourself by your nickname, like Darius Slay calling himself Big Play Slay, rubs off the wrong way with me.
Big Play Slay hasn't made a big play since he's come to the Eagles, but yeah.
Like, you don't hear, I mean, AJ Brown calls himself Swole Bat, and he called everyone else Batman, and I don't know if he called himself Swole Batman, but like, that's different because it's like a team thing. Like, everyone's Batman.
And Kelsey gave him that nickname, I believe.
Yeah, so
maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not. I mean, it rhymes obviously, but yeah, calling yourself Sexy Dexy, it's like, come on.
Yeah, rubs off the wrong way when you're making your own nicknames and people, and you're saying it yourself. You're calling yourself, like, you never heard Jimmy Rollins calling himself J-Roll. You never heard Ryan Howard calling himself the Big Piece. So I don't know. I just not a fan of that. Someone I am a fan of is Saquon Barkley. He makes his first return to MetLife Stadium. Lots of jerseys around MetLife Stadium that have Trader number 26 and, all the fun loser stuff that the Giants are coming up with. First game against the Giants, 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and the Eagles lost. Book it in.
Yeah, I think, Saquon's definitely going to hear the boo birds out today. I don't think it's warranted. If you watched Hard Knocks of the Giants offseason, you saw that, the Giants general manager and their management didn't really give him the time of day, kind of, even though the owner really wanted him back. And, Saquon wanted to be a Giant, but they didn't give him a fair offer. They said to him, go out and test free agency and then come back to us. They didn't even offer him a contract to come back. So what do you expect? And then he has a chance to come to the Eagles, who, 2 years ago in the Super Bowl, have a lot of offensive talent. Obviously, we're offering him the money he was looking for. So I get why Giants fans are mad that he went to the Eagles, but you should be more mad at your GM, who has done a pretty bad job and didn't even offer the guy a contract. The owner said that if I go to the Eagles, if he goes to the Eagles, he's going to be really angry and all that stuff, and he still didn't offer him a contract. What?
He said he'll lose sleep.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the Giants should, they should more so direct their anger towards Joe Shane instead of Saquon Barkley. But, every time after the LeBron decision to Miami and then the fans burning the jerseys and all that started it, where everyone wants to do it now. So, I think Saquon's definitely going to run angry today. He's going to have that extra motivation. I think the boo birds are only going to fuel him. We know that the Eagles are going to try to feature him today, make the Giants feel even worse about letting him go. And, if your team, he feels disrespected by the Giants because they didn't offer him a contract, I get why they didn't do it from the standpoint of they are not expecting to win. Why are you going to pay a running back $40 million? But you can't fault him for going out and trying to find a situation where he can win. We'll see if the Eagles can win or not. But playing in just one playoff game with the Giants, his career wasn't that great. So I think definitely going to be a lot of boos, but I think Saquon's going to be extra motivated, and we'll get to it in the picks portion, but might be some Saquon anytime touchdowns play today.
Yeah, it's certainly the play if you are able to put some bets out there. Yeah, it should be interesting. It's a little bit of a homecoming for Saquon, and you're rocking the Saquon shirt, and so hopefully we get some fun stuff. Maybe a little Boston Scott-esque Giants performance with Saquon Barkley. And he'll be lining up next to Jalen Hurts, who, should be getting more talk this week. But Nick Sirianni obviously is the headline throughout this past week. But Jalen Hurts should be getting talked about. He started 0 for 5 against the Browns last week, but he ended 16 for 25 with 264 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was resilient. But it's still not the best. Like, how do you assess Hurts? Because it's like I'm looking at it, starting 0 for 5 sucks, but turning it around and having a pretty good day. But you left points out there, and he has not been very good since week 11 last year.
Yeah, and I mean, you could even argue that he wasn't very good when they were 10-1. I mean, you go back to some of those games earlier in the season, it looked a lot like what we're seeing now. How I would assess him last week, I thought he played pretty well. It wasn't a great game from him, but one of the things that we've talked about, every week for the last, feels like year, basically, is don't turn the ball over, don't put the ball in harm's way, and he didn't do that. That's a step in the right direction. That is what we need to see. First time not turning the ball over in a long time. But hey, I mean, when you harp on it every week and he gets criticized for it every week, it's something that has to, be praised for when he doesn't do it. And hopefully this is something that he can move on to, kind of build from. Obviously, it's not reasonable to expect any quarterback in the NFL to not turn the ball over any time during a season. It's just going to happen. It's just the way it is. But hopefully he can stack a few of these games together going forward of not turning the ball over. But like you said, the start to the game was poor. And, I'm going to give you some stats here because we all agree that Daniel Jones stinks, right? Everyone across the NFL would say that Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. The Giants overpaid him. He's not very good, and he's probably not going to even be the Giants quarterback next season. So I'm going to give you some stats here comparing Daniel Jones and Jalen Hurts, and I want to hear your thoughts. So far this season, Daniel Jones has thrown for 1,343 yards. He has 6 touchdowns to 4 turnovers with a 62.1% completion percentage. So now Jalen Hurts this season has thrown for 1,194 yards. He has 6 touchdowns, 7 turnovers, and a 67.5% completion percentage. They're basically the same quarterback. Jalen Hurts turns the ball over more, but he also completes, just a little bit more passes. They're basically, if you just look at the stats, right? We're just looking at stats here. They have been the same quarterback this season, with Daniel Jones throwing for more yards and Jalen Hurts having, a little bit more completion percentage. But the biggest difference is Daniel Jones doesn't have any talent on offense besides Malik Neighbors, and Jalen Hurts has a ton of talent. Obviously, A.J. Brown missed a few games, but still. So how I would assess Jalen so far this season is that he hasn't been good enough. I mean, if you have similar, comparable, and some would argue even worse numbers because you have more turnovers and less yards than Daniel Jones, who everyone across the league thinks stinks, you're not playing well enough this year. And it goes back to last year. I don't think that I came on here every single week saying that Jalen Hurts, even when they were 10-1, needed to play better because they weren't scoring as much as they needed to. They weren't putting together as many drives as they need to. And I know we'll talk about the offense, and I'll kind of get into that now. But I think that the biggest problem with the Eagles offense, not Nick Sirianni, not Kellen Moore, it's the quarterback. When you look at some of the numbers so far this season and how they run the offense comparative to how they ran the offense 2 years ago and last year, it's the same exact offense. You can't tell me that with 3 different coordinators, they all have decided to just come together and say, we're not going to run under center and we're not going to throw the ball over the middle of the field just because we don't feel like it. The reason they don't do that is because the quarterback can't do it / won't do it. The Eagles on non-push-push plays have put Jalen Hurts under center 4% of the plays so far this season. The next closest team is 18%. That is because of the quarterback. That is not because of the head coach. That is not because of the offensive coordinator. That is the quarterback. the Eagles have a quarterback who cannot run under center, and I believe it's because they do not think that he can turn around, run play action, and turn his face around and read the defense and make quick decisions. That is, again, like I said, that is the quarterback. Over the middle of the field, that's been a big topic as well. The Eagles throw the ball over the middle of the field just 8% of the time. 8% of the time they throw the ball over the middle of the field. That's the biggest portion of the field. The next closest team is 15%. That, again, is because of the quarterback. His interceptions this year have been over the middle of the field. They don't believe that he can do it, / he does not want to do it. I mean, that's just how it is. It's the same problems that have been going on for the last 3 seasons with 3 different offensive coordinators. The Eagles cannot run a typical NFL offense because of the quarterback they have. A lot of people want to blame Nick Sirianni, and I understand why. But if you say to yourself, what is the number one job of a head coach and an offensive coordinator? It's to put their players in positions to succeed. If they don't believe that Jalen Hurts can succeed running an offense from under center or throwing the ball over the middle of the field, they're not going to do it. And, we've seen, Ron Jaworski talked about this on WIP this week. He said that, a lot of people have said, well, Jalen's never run under center because he didn't do it in college. And then we got in the NFL, he didn't do it. So, it's going to take him some time to get used to it. Ron Jaworski said that when he came into the NFL, he had never run under center. They put him under center after week 1 of the NFL season, and he had to get it right away. He said it's not that hard. These guys, and he's in his 5th year in the NFL. If Jalen Hurts could do it, they would be doing it, but he just can't do it. So, I think a big problem of why this Eagles offense, like, you wrote here that Lane Johnson said that they look constipated, is because they're so predictable on offense. There's only so many things you can do when you have your quarterback in shotgun every single time. The play action sucks with it. Everyone knows the RPO, it doesn't work anymore because Jalen, 1, is not as fast as he used to be. And 2, it's not the same when Saquon Barkley can't get that running start. And then there's no play action, so it's just, there's so many things that you cannot do when you have your quarterback sitting in the same position every single time when they snap the ball. And then they also are taking away the biggest part of the field. They throw the ball outside the hash marks every single time. So the biggest problem is that this offense is just so damn predictable because the quarterback just cannot run a typical NFL offense. And we've seen it so far now for his whole career. And, so many people say it's because of Nick Sirianni. Oh, Nick Sirianni has more to say in the offense than we all think he does. Do you really think, and I'm asking this to you, do you really think if they brought in another head coach that all of a sudden Jalen Hurts would be under center, Jalen Hurts would be throwing the ball over the middle of the field, they'd be running a traditional NFL offense?
Well, I mean, no, because of all the reasons you just previously said. Hurts just can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. So this is why, going back to in the beginning of why I said and why I still believe that Nick Sirianni gets so much blame that is just not on him, is that because I think that it needs to go to more people than him. I don't think Nick Sirianni, I think people think that Nick Sirianni is just an idiot who thinks, we're just going to only run shotgun. We're not going to use the middle of the field because he just doesn't like to do it. People are saying that it must be his offense because it looks the same, but why is it his offense? Why? He's never done this before. If you look back at his previous stops, he had, Matt Ryan and in Indianapolis, and he had Phillip Rivers in San Diego. You think Phillip Rivers isn't going under center? You think Phillip Rivers isn't throwing the ball over the middle of the field? Like, it's not because of Nick, and it's something that obviously, because I've been ranting about this for the last 5 minutes, is something that has been driving me crazy because, it's right there. Like, it's right there. And we all like Jalen. I like Jalen. I think Jalen has the potential to be a very good quarterback, but he just hasn't done it since 2022. And 2022, they were running the same offense. It was just new. People weren't used to the RPO, and he was so dynamic running the ball that third threat of that run from him was just holding these defenses hostage, where now they don't think he can get the outside. So they're not as scared of it. So yeah, that's kind of my little rant for the day of why, just I think that it's just too much has been put on Nick and not enough, in my opinion, has been put on Jalen.
Yeah, I mean, I opened this by saying that Hurts should have been the talk of the week, and obviously Sirianni was the headline. But
And one more thing before we move on, we
I
talked a
have
lot
more.
about the first quarters. Jalen Hurts has turned the ball over multiple times in the first quarter. Jalen Hurts has missed Saquon Barkley on a wide open touchdown against Tampa Bay in the first quarter. Last week in the first quarter, Jalen Hurts started the game 0 for 5. So yes, the team needs to come out there prepared. Yes, Nick Sirianni has a lot to do with that. But if the quarterback doesn't turn the ball over and if he hits Saquon Barkley, doesn't start the game 0 for 5, we're not talking about this. They might have won games by more. It's just a lot of things that you can put on Jalen that I think he deserves a lot more blame for that he's just not getting. And if he was executing better in the first quarters, he hasn't been playing his best football in the first quarters. I feel like we've talked about it a lot of times coming on this show. Jalen started off the game cold and then kind of turned it around in the second half. It's almost like Taiwan Walker syndrome where you go out and give up 4 runs in the first quarter and then you're in the first inning and then you finish the game 6 innings, 4 runs. It's just for whatever reason he's not starting the game. So yeah, I think he deserves a lot of blame for why this team isn't scoring in the first quarter as well.
Yeah, so Lane Johnson said this week that the Eagles' problem on offense in the first quarter is taking too long to snap the ball. The 3 keys to fixing this is get the call in quicker, more urgency from players to get lined up, and identifying the defense and go. Don't let the defense dictate. And that part falls mostly on the quarterback of identifying the defense. They had Jason Kelce at center who did that and was very good at it. Maybe the best ever at doing it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have that anymore, and Hurts is having a lot of trouble doing it. How much, obviously it's not Jason Kelce's fault, but how much of Jason Kelce's absence is truly hurting and affecting this offense, and specifically Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, so I think one thing, obviously I just went on this long rant about how I think Jalen is the biggest problem with this team. But I think one thing that we need to give him credit for is he has done a lot better identifying and, passing really against the blitz. Last year, aside from Tampa, where, we talked about this before, the biggest problem for him last year was when they brought more than one guy, when they brought 6-man pressures instead of just the 5. But against 5-man pressures this year, he has been very good. So that is definitely something that we can take. And a lot of people who are big fans of Jalen will say, well, see, he's improved on this. He can improve on a lot of things. And I think that's very fair. And I think that is a big part of, obviously Kelce is a Hall of Famer. And, I'm not saying that he didn't know how to pick up a blitz, but I think it's good that Jalen has had to take it up on a lot of his own and has done a good job with it so far this season. But in terms of other things, I think, it goes back to why I think they don't play under center is because I don't think he's great at looking at the field and kind of knowing what the defense is going to do or what they're lined up at. And I think we see a lot, with pocket presence and just stuff like that, where it seems like he's just whatever it is in, looking and reading a defense, he's just not the best at, and I think that's, again, I'll go back to it. I think that's why they keep him in shotgun, especially because he is the one now that is calling out the protections and, looking at who's going to be coming, blitzing and stuff like that. It's a lot harder to do if you're, underneath the center's butt, and having to go back, turn your head away, give it to the running back, keep it, and then turn around and try to throw and try to see everything. They want to keep it in front of him, let him see everything in front of him the whole time. So yeah, it's definitely something that he still needs to be working on. But I think we have seen a little bit of an improvement with it in terms of picking up the blitz. So, it's something you can get better at year 5. It's something that you wish he would be there at already, but, it's obviously still a work in progress. And then getting the calls in quicker, a lot has been made about Nick Sirianni making play calls, and I think that sometimes that could be an issue. If Kellen Moore calls a play call, Nick Sirianni doesn't like it, then that could be a reason why the calls aren't getting it fast enough because there's not agreement there. Or Nick's overriding sometimes. So, that they need to either Nick is going to call the plays or Nick's not. Either Kellen's going to call the plays, Kellen's not. I think they just need to have just one mind out there, instead of a bunch of different voices in his head.
Work in progress in year 5. That is not what I expected to hear about Jalen Hurts if you asked me 2 years ago. But here we are. All right. Your notable matchups for today, as we are about 20 minutes away from kickoff from MetLife Stadium. Very ugly stadium, very gray and blah.
Have you ever been there?
I have never been there.
It is horrible.
Yeah, my mom's been there for concerts, and she said the parking's a nightmare, and it's just, from looking at it, it's just so.
I feel like there's never been a day that the sky's not gray there. My college roommate is a Jets fan. So when the Eagles played the Jets a few years ago, myself, him, and one of my other friends from school, we took the ride up the Turnpike, stayed over in New York the day before, and then went to the Eagles-Jets game. And that stadium is just horrible. I mean, we were saying the whole time we were there that if you dropped us in the stadium, blindfolded us and threw us in there, and we had to tell you whose stadium you were in, you would have no idea, because they share it, which that was his excuse, which I think is a bad excuse, because so many teams share stadiums. There's nothing on any of the walls inside the stadium, anything that tells you whose stadium it is. You walk into Wells Fargo Center, you have the Sixers stuff, you have the banners up of the players, you have the hats from the hat trick wall from the Flyers, you can measure yourself up against Gritty, all that awesome stuff. And they share a stadium. At MetLife, it's just gray everywhere. There's no signage of any teams. There's nothing. The fan shop just says fan shop. It is weird. It is really weird. Stadium's terrible. Getting to the stadium's horrible. The parking lot, you have to walk to get from the tailgating. You have to walk up a tunnel that brings you over the road and then down into the. It's just a terrible stadium. It's horrible.
Yeah, I have a friend there that's at the game today, so I'll get his thoughts on it.
Oh yeah.
Later this afternoon. But yeah, the reason for that is they wanted it to be neutral for any event that's there, which is why there is nothing. And the seats are gray, the walls are gray, because they had the Super Bowl there, they have all the concerts, they have, Jets and Giants. They want it to be neutral for everything. The Philadelphia Eagles host Temple football and have an eagle painted in their seats.
Yeah, it's dumb. It's really bad, and it's in New Jersey, not even in New York.
There you go. All right, your notable matchups for today is Eagles fans versus MetLife Stadium. That's my notable matchup.
Well, yeah, and last thing on MetLife, I mean, that turf is just horrible.
Oh my God! How many injuries?
Yeah, knock on wood, the Eagles can come out of there without any major injuries. But luckily, it's going to get replaced because the FIFA, or not the FIFA, the World Cup, so they won't play on it. So luckily, because they're hosting the World Cup final there, so thankfully, it's going to get replaced in the next few years. But man, that place just sucks. But anyway, my first one is Malik Neighbors versus Darius Slay / Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, we talked about it a lot. We talked about Malik Neighbors a lot. He's their whole offense. I mean, they have a rookie running back who's pretty good. But besides that, they're going to target Neighbors a lot. He's coming back. I mean, he's their big guy. And if he has a big game, it could be a long game for the Eagles. I'm very nervous about Darius Slay coming off injury. Quinyon Mitchell, I'm more excited to see him play against him. Obviously as a rookie, there's still some things he needs to hone up, but he's very fast and has done a great job so far this season. I believe he leads the league in pass breakups. So I'm really excited to see him against Neighbors, but Slay I'm a little bit more worried about. And then another thing we talked about, I'm kind of doubling back on a lot of our matchups we already talked about, but it's Brian Burns versus Fred Johnson. Brian Burns in in Carolina was a great player, great pass rusher. And Fred Johnson really struggled last game against the Bucs, or 2 games ago. Last game he started against the Bucs, being Jalen's left side. Like I talked about a little bit before, Jalen has not had great pocket presence this season. And then obviously coming from that blind side, Brian Burns and the New York Giants are going to try to take advantage of Fred Johnson. So it's definitely going to be a big matchup to watch today.
Yes, sir. All right. The SeatGeek Standout Stars, our first ad of the show. SeatGeek is the easiest, most efficient way to buy your tickets. Each seat is given a green, red, or yellow dot, indicating whether purchasing that ticket would be a good, bad, or fair deal. By using code Philly Sports Report, you can save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Code is PHILLYSPORTS Again, $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Link in the description of the YouTube stream and in the bio of all social medias. Go check it out. If you, for some reason, want to go to MetLife Stadium, you can get $20 off. Eagles tickets, Sixers literally start this week, which is crazy. The Flyers are well underway. I was at opening night last night. That game stunk. So go get your tickets for concerts, for comedy, whatever, everything. It's all on SeatGeek. The standout stars, mine is the guy that's coming back home, Saquon Barkley, and I think yours is the same.
Yeah, I mean, how can you not go Saquon? I mean, if we both think the Eagles are going to win this game, I know you joked 500 yards in the loss, but if we both think the Eagles are going to win this game, how can you not go with the guy who's returning home? I mean, I think the Eagles are going to want to get him touches early and often. I think they're going to try to force him to get a touchdown. I mean, we've kind of seen Nick Sirianni playing the bits a little bit with always somehow finding a way to get Boston Scott a touchdown against the Giants, helping everyone's best hit. So, Saquon definitely is going to want to get a touchdown against his former team. He's going to want to show out against them. I think the Eagles are going to feature him. And, if I think the Eagles are going to win this game, and I think Saquon Barkley is going to be a big reason why.
All right, gamblers are us locks of the game. Eagles are -3.5 today. Over under is 45.5. That's kind of a short line for Eagles Giants if you look at the past few years of what it has been. What are you thinking?
Yeah, the line is actually moved, at least down here on Hard Rock Sportsbook. It's gone to 3, Eagles -3. There's some late money coming in on the Giants. I like the Eagles with the points barely today. I also like the Eagles money line. And we talked about it. Saquon touchdown, Saquon 2 touchdowns, Saquon first touchdown, Saquon. That's where I'm putting my money today. I think he's gonna. It just seems like whenever these guys come back, they at least get a touchdown. They do something that kind of makes the other team regret letting them go. And we've talked about it a lot. I think the Eagles are going to try to force them to get a touchdown today. And I think if you put a little money on Saquon Barkley, I think he'll be doing all right. I told you about pregame that we all sent one of my friends from school $10 to put it on Saquon 2 touchdowns. And if it hits, we're all going out to dinner on it during Christmas break. So pray for me for that one so I can get a nice dinner back in Jersey. But yeah, so riding Saquon today.
Riding Saquon, and you're riding Saquon your shirt thanks to the FOCO Fit Check Real Fancy, the best gear. That's why FOCO makes legendary gear for the most legendary fans. Click on the link in the description or bio to save 10% off any order with FOCO. I almost said SeatGeek. FOCO.
Yeah, you said it. The Kelly Green, I really wanted a Kelly Green Saquon jersey, but they unfortunately are all sold out, and I can't really have easy access to the Eagles Pro Shop, so we got the Saquon Kelly Green t-shirt today. I still need to get one of these. My family dog's name is Barkley, loosely named after Saquon Barkley. I mentioned my dad's a Giants fan, so a little Christmas present potentially to mess with him. But yeah, we ride with the Saquon today, and we mentioned it a lot. I think he's going to have a really big game, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, sure. We have a fun FOCO Fit Check next week. Thank you to FOCO for that. So we'll be rocking something for the Kelly Green game next week against Jacksonville. It's Sunday night. That should be so much fun.
That's
anyway.
2 weeks. Next week is Bengals.
Oh, it's Bengals. 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
The one that got flexed. The one that got flexed
That's right.
to 1 o'clock because both these teams.
Yeah, so apologies for that. 2 weeks we'll have the Kelly Green. I keep getting these weeks mixed up. All right. Keys to the game. Saquon.
Yeah, so I'm throwing one out that we haven't talked about and I don't think it's ever been a key to the game. So in the many years that we've been doing this show, do not make any mistakes on special teams. The Eagles last week, a big reason the Browns were in that game is because they gave up a blocked field goal touchdown. The other week they had the same thing, another blocked kick, and then obviously just Isaiah Rodgers pushing the Bucs defender into Cooper DeJean because he didn't know that you're not allowed to push a player into your kick returner. And then, obviously there was the Keely Ringo one as well. Special teams has been a major issue for this team this season. There's been a lot bigger issues, but if you're bad on special teams, it can win or lose you games. So the Eagles need to clean things up on special teams today. And then another key, we haven't talked about it at all, but the Giants lost their left tackle for the year. Andrew Thomas, very good player. The Eagles need to take advantage of that. Josh Sweat moved Bryce Huff around a little bit. Bryce Huff going back to his home stadium of MetLife. Maybe he'll be a little bit better on that turf. But the Eagles need to take advantage of that, get to Daniel Jones, and I think that they can win the game because of that.
All right, let's move on to our final segment, the predictions for today's game between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants. Could Nick Sirianni be coaching for his job today? I don't think he'll be fired after this game, no matter what happens. But I do think the Eagles will win this game and advance to 4-2, which really is impressive. I think the Eagles win 24-17. 24-17 Eagles.
All right. Something underrated. Well, first off, I don't think they would fire Nick Sirianni in season. I think that if they're going to do that, it would have been the bye week, unless they just rip off a 16 losing streak or something like that. But I don't think that they will fire Nick in season. Something we didn't really talk about, but Jalen has played really, really bad at MetLife in his career. Last year they lost 2 weeks at MetLife, Giants and Jets. A couple years ago, probably the worst game of his career, multiple interceptions, was at MetLife. He has played, for whatever reason, really bad at MetLife. But with that said, I still think the Eagles win 24-20. So close to your score. I think it's going to be a close one. I think it might be like 24-13. Giants score late touchdown and something like that. But yeah, I think it's going to be another. Until they blow someone out, I'm not going to say that they can do it. So another close game here. I want to split it out.
Elijah's got a blowout today, 37-14 Eagles. So if that happens, we said it last week. Eagles need to get some style points, win convincingly. Yeah. They're yet to do that. Today could be a good day to do it, but let's see if it'll.
I tell you what, if they can put together a blowout today, it would just be massive in terms of confidence from both the team and the fan base going forward. I said it very jokingly that the Eagles got flexed out of next week's 4:25 game to 1 o'clock because both teams stink. I said that as a joke, but in reality, when you get flexed out, they don't think you're that good. The networks don't think a lot of people want to watch you, but the Bengals aren't very good. The Jaguars, obviously, they got a win today, but they stink. And then you got Dallas, who's playing really bad. You got a chance to rip off some wins here, and I think a blowout win, a convincing win, kind of gain them some momentum going into the next week and potentially get us on a little bit of a winning streak here.
Oh, you gotta hope so. But that's it from us here on the Eagles pregame show, brought to you by SeatGeek, music of Philly sports reports, and $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. And also thank you to FOCO for sponsoring the FOCO Fit Check. Check out phillysportsports.com. Post game, Sam Heine will have yours truly, Sam Heine will have the post game recap after the game today. I will have the takeaways a day after. So thank you everybody for watching. Check us out on all social media. I'm Ben Goldstein. This is Sam Heine. See you next week. Go Birds!
Go Birds!